This time around on The Journey, joined by local journalist Jodie Bruton. Hello.
Hi, how are you, Kev? Thanks
Really
for having
well.
me.
Thank you so much for being part of this, because you are one of the people of The Journey of which I don't know a lot about, which makes it a lot easier for me to be bamboozled and wowed by some of your amazing talent. So thank you so much. But we always start with, I guess, the heritage to Albury-Wodonga in the area. So, you know, the usual question is, have you grown up here or what brought you to town? So let's start there.
I'm a Corowa farm girl. I grew up out of town on the Riverina Highway. We were 40 kilometres from town, so that was half an hour in a car or an hour and a bit in an old school bus, the oldest on the fleet. And I guess it was a pretty idyllic lifestyle. And I went to Corowa Public School, Corowa High School. A lot of kids I started in kindergarten with and went right through to year 11. I feel like that would never happen now. The cohorts are so mixed up. So it was, pretty interesting. Same group of kids growing up, and then in year 11 after year 11 I went to the opposite end of the world, really. I went to Denmark on a student exchange with a Rotary student exchange, and I studied over there for a year, and before I came back and finished my HSC at Corowa High School.
That's brilliant. So as local as you can get, really, to our region, and wonderful
Yes.
you've had that worldly experience pretty early in the piece. And then so following high school there at Corowa, did you leave the area for university or did you stick around, or what?
I wanted to stay. I was desperate to travel, so I wanted a job as soon as I could. And I came into the Border Mail office and knocked on the editor's door, as you do when you're 19. And there were no jobs at the time. We were just about looking at a recession in Australia, I think. And he said, go to university and then come back. So I studied. I was lucky to get into CSU Bathurst. I did a comms degree and never regretted that. Made lifelong friends there. And then I went on and got jobs on other papers. I worked at 4 other regional dailies and weeklies, and then I finally came back to the Border Mail in 2000. So I got here, but it was a long way around.
Fantastic. So what brought you back to the area? Was it simply after a bit of experience at other regional locations? I guess the common theme I find in these journeys is people just really value what we have here.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It was, I think the Border Mail's always had an incredibly strong reputation as a regional newspaper and punched above its weight. I wanted to work here, and my husband was a journalist as well. They were looking for 2, so it was a kind of package deal. And we came in 2000, and we're still here, aside from a little detour to New Zealand for a couple of years.
Oh, there you go. So you're a food writer at the moment. You really do the food and the lifestyle side of our Border Mail. And is that was that the dream? Was that the dream sort of role when you were thinking of going to journalism and comms? Was it to get down that nice, indulgent sort of part of journalism?
I think that's come later. Originally, I was interested in politics and still very interested in politics. But I think in later years, I've really followed the foodie side of things, and because it's a hobby of mine. We had a cafe for a couple of years in Rutherglen. We opened it just minutes before the global financial crisis. So it gave me great insights into the hospitality sector, and it's really been a good experience to write about that now. And also they're just the great, that's the fun stuff.
Yeah, it's where you want to be, particularly, well, I suppose during the pandemic, there would have been less of those sorts of food and culture-based sort of writing activities. It would have been, I guess, a difficult job during that time.
Well, it was difficult, but it was amazing in the way those sectors pivoted and adapted and changed their model completely. So it was, and they did it quickly and effectively. So we had more stories to write about than there was time. It was it was a different time for everyone and challenging, but I think lots of businesses have come out stronger.
Now, food's a fair bit away from politics.
Yes.
Do you follow the politics sort of more so now? And Are you bamboozled by it? Do you look forward to election years as a journalist? Do you ever think, wish I was still sort of dabbling in political stories? Or
Oh, look, I follow it. We've always watched all the political shows at home on Sunday. We're watching Insiders and I really do enjoy it. I'm kind of happy that I'm not having to report on it. Yes.
And I guess on the food side of things, we might talk about this some more shortly, but you'd be the right person to ask. I'm wanting to take some visitors out for dinner this weekend. Where should I go?
Yes.
Because we're creatures of habit, aren't we? Like, we do always go, we know the same restaurant or the same cafe or the same...
Yep.
And it's our go-to because we're sort of comfortable with the scenery, the surroundings, and the price point or whatever it might be. But...
Yep.
We don't tend to, really experiment or try new things as humans. But that's your job, really, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And it's amazing how many emails and texts I get of asking that exact question. I've got people coming, where can I take them? Clearly I need to know much more. Who are you bringing and what price point? Are kids coming? And, I really... am happy to steer people we have so many great eateries in Albury-Wodonga and Northeast. In fact, yeah.
How do you go switching off? Because I'd imagine every meal you have, you've probably got an inspiration to create a story or whatever it might be. Do you find that sort of particular field consumes you a little bit more than some of the others?
Yes, we love food in our family. We all fight over the cooking. I've got 2 daughters and my husband. We're equally happy to cook, so we're always thinking about what's the next meal, basically, and also very happy to try everything that's on offer around town as well. Yeah.
So do you eat to live or live to eat? The age-old question.
We live to eat.
I love it. So when you aren't working, what do you do with your spare time?
Okay, so I love the arts. So I love movies, I love theatre, and we're obviously spoilt for choice with Hot House and the Cube and the Entertainment Centre. I will be one of those places, and like I say, stuffing myself silly at somewhere like Canvas or Riverdeck or anywhere in South Albury potentially, Junction Place in Wodonga. Out of town, Rutherglen has some really amazing places, and Beechworth too. So I'd probably be eating, and because I have very passive interests, I guess I try to get a little bit of exercise in as well. So I have just started Zumba with Charlie, which I can highly recommend. And
Charlie's great.
Yes, fabulous. Yeah, it's difficult to keep up, but I would very much recommend that for the fun of it.
We could get sidetracked on Zumba classes because I have tried it a couple of times myself, and it's always confronting if you're in a room with a mirror, I find.
Yes, no mirrors at where I am in the Wodonga Bowling Club. So
Good.
Fortunately.
Good. I did it once in a room with a mirror, and I felt like the most uncoordinated person in the group. So it wasn't a great experience, and didn't go racing back in a hurry, but I know Charlie does a great job of that. I find journalists are quite critical people usually, overthinkers I'd probably say sometimes, because they're just constantly, everything that happens around them relates back to something else at either a later point in time or something that had happened previously. So they tend to really journalists tend to really absorb other people and are like fascinated and curious about other people. And find things to admire in them. So I'd like to know, I usually ask people, who do you admire the most? And some people go to their family members or their parents or whatever it might be. Some people go superstars. Who do you admire?
I'm going to go Jacinda Ardern.
Right.
I think it's, I guess, when we're so short of leadership that is effective and empathetic and progressive, she has managed to do all of that and some. So she also has a comms degree like I do, so I feel like, she's
relatable.
Well, I feel like what am I doing with my life if she's a Prime Minister and I'm a food writer? But I think she is very admirable in the way she relates to the world and to people.
It's gathered attention really for New Zealand.
Yes.
Just for that one leader, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. Yeah.
Quotes. What do you like with quotes? Any that you like or any that you use as almost a mantra each day or filter your life through?
Well, as a journalist, I'm always looking for a good quote. But I think the one that I do try to live by is do something every day that scares you. And I know that has been attributed to Eleanor Roosevelt, but others are saying, that might not be quite exactly what she said. But I think the sentiment is the same. And it is something that I really have tried to do, and because it's where growth comes from when you're getting out of your comfort zone and daring to fail, I guess.
And do you do that professionally and personally as well?
Yes, I try to. I think obviously often it's the story that that you're a little bit nervous about, that's going to, that everyone else is interested in doing, but a little bit afraid to go there. So I think it is probably, I do apply it professionally and just to life in general.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll ask people on the journey about advice they'd give a younger them.
Yes.
Is there anything that you'd sort of, off that quote, and I guess that experience, or any advice that you've ever been given that you'd forward on to other people?
Definitely. I actually wrote a column once. It was a sort of a love letter to my 13-year-old self. And my key advice was, do not perm your hair at 13. It's you will regret it forever. It will make your hair so thick, and it will take forever to dry.
So it's that wonderful bit of foresight, I guess, that you're writing to yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Sure. And maybe don't sweat the small stuff, but really the perm was the undoing.
I love it. What do you consider to be your biggest achievement in life so far?
I'm going to say my children. I've got 2 daughters, Jade and Mabel. So Jade is 15 and Mabel is 11. We like lots of couples, we had trouble. We had infertility troubles, so it was a sort of a 10-year battle to get there. And they're just we are just so blessed to have them both. Jade was born when we were in New Zealand, working on over there in newspapers as well, and then Mabel was born in Wodonga when we came home 4 years later. So it's they're great girls. Jade obviously loves wet weather and sideways rain. I feel like we only lived there for a year with her, but she's still a Kiwi through and through. And Mabel too just loves all the seasons, and I think we get that on the border. So
we certainly do, don't we?
Yes.
That's what a lot of people do say. They say, you've just got your defined seasons.
Yes, absolutely.
No mincing of it. You talk about that the fertility struggles, I guess, trying to become parents. Something I know I'm guilty of taking for granted, because our first child was born the day after our first wedding anniversary, and we've been lucky enough to have 5 kids. But I often talk to people that have been through that journey as a couple and have tried everything and almost given up in a lot of instances. So many people have almost given up and then it's just come their way. Yep. Do you think it's more rewarding to be a parent under that circumstance?
I think so. I think we were obviously well and truly ready for it. I was 35 when I had Jade in New Zealand, and we had done all the socialising, all the dinners out. We were so ready to start a family, and I had a lot of patience for that process, and I was ready to just be in that moment and really appreciate it, and we did.
Yeah, good on you, because it's one that not a lot of people speak about.
Yes,
some people think there's a sort of stigma related to it, or you hear of some relationships that have unfortunately failed because of the pressures and the stress.
Yes,
but it's good to see and hear the success stories of the other side.
It's so common. It's it's 1 in 5 couples. So I think maybe it could be less stigma involved if people did. Yeah, we're willing to just share a little bit more.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us today. We've heard about sliding door moments in life. Yeah, the old fork in the road. It's funny, you said earlier that bit about doing something that scares you each day. You'd find that anybody who has applied that to the moments in time of choices and what have you could have had very different journeys to what they have today based on their preparedness.
Yes.
So what are your sort of sliding door moments? You've been overseas, you've done different things, different jobs. Were all of those sort of considerations and tough sort of moments, or...? Yeah,
I feel like you say, we have always been happy to get out of our comfort zone and we could feel when we were settling in and things were becoming just a little bit routine. So we did go to New Zealand for 2 years and worked on the Dominion Post. My husband was a sports editor over there, which we couldn't believe they'd let an Australian be a sports editor in a New Zealand newsroom, but that was great, a super experience for him. And I was a sub-editor on the team at night. The Commonwealth Games were on at the time, just the week we started, and I remember walking in every night to the Dominion Post building, and the Australian anthem was always blaring on the TVs in the background. It was very awkward for a while. We were winning everything, obviously dominating in Melbourne. And also when we came home, we opened the cafe at Rutherglen to have a go at that. It was, like I said, 5 minutes before the global financial crisis hit. But we did that for 3 years, and there were great insights into hospitality and made me really appreciate how people stick that out for 10 and 20 years. It's a grind, but it's also very rewarding.
So let's touch on that for a second then, around the cafe thing. So was the food writing after the cafe ownership that became the passion?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I think because I know what it's like to be baking on New Year's Eve or after a school reunion, or it's constant when you're in a small team and need fresh food for brunch the next day. And I think it's given me a real insight into what's involved in those sort of small family businesses and even larger ones.
Yeah. So really, it's that's where your skills are combined from the two experiences, is it? From the journalism and then the cafe ownership of your own.
Yeah. It seems like a good fit for me.
Yeah. Wonderful. It's probably one of those sliding door moments you didn't see coming there, maybe.
Absolutely,
that one. Yeah. To reinvigorate the journalism career in a different direction.
Yeah.
What's the best thing that's happened to you in life so far, do you think?
I think, lots of highlights, but I think turning 18 on the west coast of Denmark, surrounded by a bunch of amazing Danes, and that whole experience, and I'm still, 30 years later, I'm still in touch with those families and those school friends. It was life-changing. I learnt a lot about, life in general, I guess, and maintaining those relationships. Hygge is a big Danish thing. Have you ever come across that concept?
What's hygge?
Well, it's so dark and cold, and for months over in Denmark that they have this concept of hygge, which they've practiced for a long time. It's about getting people together. It's a lot of candlelight. It's a feeling of coziness and bringing people together and celebrating when it's dark and keeping their spirits up. And I think some of that concept of hygge, which I try to apply a little bit in Albury, sort of came into play over COVID as well, in that our world sort of shrunk and we had to make the most of what we had with fewer people and in our homes.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because the whole multicultural society thing, which Australians sort of tried to fight against for some time, and some people still do struggle to come to terms with and think it brings great challenges and threats with it, brings so much benefit, doesn't it? That worldly sort of view and approach to life.
Absolutely. It's just sharing different concepts.
And understanding where what people's priorities are and things like that, just in different cultures. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
So what did you plan to do? When you talked about being, Corowa Primary, Corowa High, you had your little gap year, that's nice. But but what did you really think you were going to do as a kid? What was your career? What were you burning to hopefully try to achieve in life?
When I was 8, I wanted to be a poet. And then by the time I was 12 and was really into BTN, which is, of course, still a thing now, then I decided I wanted to be a journalist. I'd done an assignment and I did okay on it. It was a print report of the BTN episode. And so by 12, I knew I wanted to be a journalist. By 14, I knew I wanted to work at the Border Mail. So when my friends were reading Dolly, I was reading the Border Mail feature pages. And,
it doesn't sound really glamorous, does it? It sounds a little nerdy, if I may say.
I know. No, exactly. I when the Border Mail changed its masthead from the Border Morning Mail, which a lot of people still call it even now, to the Border Mail, there was a T-shirt. I bought it. I don't have it now, but I did buy it at the time. It's incredibly nerdy.
That's fantastic. So you really are living the dream.
I guess so, yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I love it because so many people do say, I was going to be a firefighter or something and they end up being an accountant. And you go, well, that's so far away from what you thought. But yours is just absolutely textbook. You might actually be the first person I've spoken to, I think, that have said they're doing what they thought they would do. So well done. That deserves a congratulations, I think. So thinking about the part of your story that isn't written yet, because it seems to me like you've remained focused and passionate on what you hoped to do, and we've just heard what you plan to do. You've taken a few opportunities to move around and work your way up to where you needed to get to, or where you ideally wanted to be. What's the next part of your story look like? What comes after being a food journalist?
Yeah, look, I just, I'd like to write more for fun. I would love to write a children's book. I've got a couple of ideas I'd like to get down. And I have been writing a weekly column for 7 years, which I'd love to do a compilation of, a few of those.
Yeah. So that'll be sort of, the next 2 or 3 years? What about 10 years from now? What do you think?
I want to do more travel, don't we all? Yeah. I feel like we've had a bit of a break from that, and I'd like to see a bit more of Australia. I'd like to take my girls back to New Zealand. It would be lovely to take my 16-year-old over for, again, we haven't been since she was 3. And then my husband and I, we had our 50th birthdays last year. We were both in lockdown, so it was kind of subdued. So I'm hoping by 60 we'll be able to go to Iceland and see the Northern Lights, or do something special.
Do you think there's a bit of COVID catch-up happening at the moment? Like we've sort of gone from nothing to suddenly being bombarded with all the things that promised they'd happen over the last 2 years and didn't, but now they're going to play make-up rather than give us a refund or things like that?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yes. I put together the 6 things to do on the border every weekend. Yep. I do that column as well. And, I've really just it's been a wing and a prayer for a long time to, get that, come up with 6 things, what to read, what to bake. And now I could put 60 things every weekend. There is so much happening. It's all back.
Yeah, so let's touch on. I'm promising in the next couple of journeys we'll probably hopefully get rid of the COVID conversation, because I think one, it's still relevant because we're still coming to terms with what actually happened to us. I mean, if you've got a toddler at the moment, you'll walk around town and some people go, "Geez, your child's grown," and you go, "Oh, that's because they had 2 years out of eyesight from everybody."
Exactly.
It's a significant moment in history, significant moment in time. How did you go, with the whole sort of lockdown, some homeschooling, no doubt, with the kids your age, and just the entire experience? And what did it teach you?
Oh, look, it taught me that people, and especially kids, are very adaptable. My kids just got on with the home learning. I probably didn't invest as much as some, but also maybe didn't need to because they weren't so young, and they were mostly able to. Obviously, the high school daughter could do it herself, and I've got a daughter who was in year 4 and 5 at the time, so she needed a little bit of help. But in terms of that, I was pretty lucky, which was good because work, like I said, we had more stories than there were days in the week and time to do. So there was lots. You've
mentioned a couple of significant moments outside of this. A pandemic's the recent one. You mentioned in there being in business in a global financial crisis. You mentioned trying to get a job during a recession.
Yes.
Have you had any sort of learnings from they're 3 completely different times in your life? I know, but have they sort of taught you something? Do you think?
Oh, I think there's always value in whatever you do. You learn from all of those experiences, and when one door closes, maybe another opens. I went to university. Maybe I wouldn't have done that. I learnt a lot about the hospitality industry. We worked with my mother-in-law, who is a very clever foodie and cool, calm under pressure. That was for 3 years. Not everyone gets to do that, so that was an amazing experience. And then my husband is now this incredible barista and can make eggs any which way. So it's, even out of adversity, there's always skills that you get, and it's win-win.
Reflecting on your future, Is there something you think you need to be defined by? Like, is there something like, well, you know, when you get to the content stage of life to go, I've done everything I can, old age is upon me and what have you, what do you want to look back and hope you're remembered for doing by family, friends, or maybe in the industry of journalism?
Yeah, I hope I provided a little bit of light in my column writing amongst the more serious issues of the day. I think I'm probably known as a little bit flippant, and I think sometimes we just need to look at things in a bit lighter way to manage it. It's probably what my mantra, how I've got through things. So I guess maybe for bringing something different to the content of the paper would be the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay, great. So this is a good moment where we usually wrap up with a bit of fun and we talk about a dinner party, right? So this you're going to have to be all over this.
Kev, yes. This is the question I have put so much thought into.
So, 3 people for dinner, alive or dead, whoever you want it to be. Who would you have sitting at the table with you?
Yeah, and this is the issue. 3 people, so difficult to get it down to 3.
I'll let you break the rules if you need to.
Could you? Okay, because I wouldn't normally do a dinner party for less than 10. I feel like. No, but I will. I'll let you ask the question. So I would say Nigella Lawson for sure. She is my absolute favourite. I guess she is. She's a great cook. She's a food writer. She has a way with words. So I'm sure she'd bring a dish as well. I heard her speak in Melbourne a couple of years ago, and someone was asking her a question, and they had just, as an aside, mentioned their sweet potato recipe. And then she was saying, wait, go back. I need to get your recipe after the show. And I love her because she's just so interested in everybody.
Yep, so Nigella, and maybe she's brought a dish. Now, is that a theme that you're going to have for the next couple of people sitting at the table?
Look, I'm more than happy to cater, but I just think if Nigella's coming, she could chip in.
Who else have we got?
I would say Lee Sales. I think, I have always admired her work, and again, she's very good at the light and shade. She can seem to do the serious interviews and good at the softer stuff as well. So I think she'd be fun to have on the table. And then I'm just torn about I should have a bloke as well. We can't, and so I'm thinking Neil Finn. So it's got to be a Kiwi and crowded house.
Bring the guitar.
Exactly. I'm an 80s music child. So yeah.
I like that. I like the token bloke. Is that where we're up to in life now? Is it starting to go the other way? Or?
No, we can't be doing that. No. Can we?
I love it, Jodie. Sweet or savoury? What are you going to eat when you sit down with them?
Savoury every time. So for me, it's chips and cheese over chocolate any day.
Yeah, good choice. And then a normal weekend. I mean, we've discussed you clearly just love getting out, absorbing everything, but what if I say to on any weekend, what's planned for the weekend? What's your priorities?
Yes, so usually Albury Wodonga Farmers Market to start, to pick up some supplies for the weekend. I usually like to get to a movie or a theatre, and there's always something happening. At the moment, Licorice Pizza has started at Regent Cinemas. I'm making my way through the nominees for Best Picture of the Oscars, so that's on my list to see. And also because I've done 50 things last weekend for the long weekend, I really just need to wash the floor and the dog this weekend.
Sometimes it's those simple tasks, isn't it? Just trying to fit them in somewhere amongst
not
it all.
necessarily in that order.
Well, Jodie Bruton, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you here as part of the journey. Thanks so much I think you've lived to your mantra today by potentially doing something that scares you a little bit, because you are usually on the other side of this. So I hope you've enjoyed it. It's been pretty pain-free, and thanks again.
Thanks very much, Kev.